Before we start, something to note. This is just a video evaluating fictional characters and should not be used as a means of diagnosis. It's more like if I knew this person, I would suspect they might be gifted. An educator cannot make the diagnosis. If you're unsure about whether someone you know or yourself might be gifted, please consult a registered psychologist. So let's get started. Welcome to the second episode of Gifted on Gifted, where a gifted specialist talks about the giftedness of anime characters. Today, we are focusing on Pannacotta Fugo from part 5 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure.
Pannacotta Fugo IQ152 という高い知能を持ち、13歳で大学に入学した。
Oh yeah, why am I making this video again? Well, let's analyze how Fugo shows gifted characteristics then. A very short synopsis of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5. To put it in the simplest terms, the series is about Giorno Giovanna climbing to the top of an Italian mafia gang to put a stop to the drug industry. In the bizarre world of Jojo, some chosen people have special powers, which are a reflection of one's inner self and are called stands. Giorno gangs up with a respectable leader called Bucciarati and works together with his team, consisting of Abacchio, Mista, Narancia, and of course, Fugo. I have to add simplest terms because Jojo's Bizarre Adventure is a phenomenal series known for its unlimited interpretations it can bring about under its mask of bizarre supernatural fights and seemingly straightforward plot. So let's begin. Fugo's childhood is similar to that of many gifted children, especially in areas where awareness of gifted education is scarce. Seeing how Fugo has a talent, his wealthy parents give him very high expectations, and that crushes his innocence and passion in learning. That learning has become only a way to please his parents and receive recognition. Without a full understanding of the situation he is in, and being a member of the exceptionally gifted population, his emotional overexcitability, which is the intense sensitivity towards slight changes of emotions, will naturally explode to the point he would even want to kill his own father. Such intensity is stronger with higher levels of giftedness, and this thought and surge of emotions can be scary to the gifted individual themselves, especially when there is no psychological support available for his level of giftedness in his environment. Therefore, without finding a way to resolve this fear and emotion, Fugo resorts to the only thing his tiny self can think of: suppression. Fugo has also undergone acceleration and got into university at the age of 13. His exceptional giftedness makes the university environment more suitable for his academic pursuits. If you'd like to know more about acceleration options, check out our description for a Mind Matters podcast link discussing types of acceleration. When he gets into the university, he thought he could finally find like-minded peers. But unluckily, he came across a professor who is a pedophile, and that betrayal of hope leads him to totally crack. Even in those moments, we can see how he's in an environment where people do not understand giftedness, and instead of receiving sympathy and emotional support, all he receives are snide remarks and a denial of his true self. After being disowned by his family, Fugo resorts to another common gifted trait: benign chicanery. Though in Fugo's case, it's nowhere benign. Benign chicanery is a concept where gifted children use their intellect and their understanding of the world to get out of trouble and avoid responsibility for their own action. This is a phenomenon that educators and parents need to address to let children know that this is not being responsible or just, the very concepts the gifted themselves often try to uphold, and also to know why they are doing that. It is lucky that he met Bucciarati, who acknowledges Fugo and needs him for who he is, as well as acknowledging him, both his positive and negative sides. Fugo's clothing and appearance also is a manifestation of of his past and identity. Fugo is first shown to be wearing a white shirt of innocence. And when he gets into university, he wears a green suit that looks slightly awkward on his small stature. Let's not forget Shakespeare's green-eyed jealousy from Merchant of Venice and Jealousy, the green-eyed monster from Othello. These references show how his gifted self is one that people will be jealous about at all times, and he will have to live with this. After he was disowned, his clothes became less green but more turquoise, with patterns that look like holes. After joining the gang, he wears a green blazer with a tattered design. The many holes on his clothing shows how the jealousy has been maiming him mentally and psychologically. Beneath the green blazer of jealousy, there is a tie beneath with strawberry patterns, suggesting how jealousy ties his capability and intellect that could have brought him to eminence. And strawberry is another Shakespeare reference, note Othello. The strawberry pattern represents his naivety and innocence, which is a great representation of gifted minds. In particular, the asynchronous development, the unequal development of their intellect and other parts of the brain. Deep inside, he still feels like a 15 or 16-year-old teen despite his exceptional intellect. He is living a life of multiple layers. His public self, his intellectual self, and his naive self, all expressed through his clothing and appearance. Names are also an important part in Jojo's bizarre adventure. Pannacotta, as we know, is an Italian dessert. It was first documented in times of 1960s, with unverified statements suggesting that it started around 1900s. This is somewhat similar to the history of gifted education. The most prominent one was Lewis Terman's study back in 1916. But research in gifted education only gained momentum around the 1980s, also a roughly 60-year gap. Pannacotta is in essence molded cream, just like Fugo, whose outlook in life is molded by the environment he was brought up in. Fugo in Italian means dismissing, just like how Fugo dismisses his neurodiversity as a gifted and chooses to live a life behind a facade, hiding his true self in order to survive.
いいですか 6×5 はいくつです
6×5 は30。
そうやっぱりできるじゃないですか
終わったよフーガどうん
できたのどれどれ何これ
当たってる
I feel you there, Fugo. I feel ya. Gifted individuals do get annoyed when they don't see why people don't get it. Sometimes it's not just annoyed at the other party, but annoyed at themselves for not being able to see why they don't get it. Let's look at the relationship between Fugo and Narancia. Fugo is constantly mad at Narancia, but they are hands down the closest in the gang. Interactions around Fugo nearly always involve Narancia. Gifted individuals treasure exclusive relationships, especially in a world where they are used to being misunderstood and being the lowest priority. Fugo saved Narancia by feeding him, as Narancia feeds his psychological thirst for a sense of belonging. He would be worried beyond normal when Narancia returned late from his shopping trip. This is also made even more obvious when Narancia asks Fugo to teach him math, and he thinks this is a chance for him to be even closer to Narancia so he can meet his level, and thus, when Narancia can't, his anger boils even more. Gifted individuals do not have an accurate understanding of how neurotypical people think without direct instructions or intensive observations with trials and errors. While Fugo tries to use logic as his main language to explain to people, such as towards Mr. Superstition in Narancia's amazing maths, as well as the comment to Jojo on correcting his directions. Even when they are aware, when they try to match it to another person's understanding, it's often a hit and a miss, and might end up sounding patronizing, like when he tries to explain directions to Narancia, or making the task seem quite impossible by presenting complex ideas and expecting Narancia, who is a goofy character who can barely do 6 times 5, to be able to repeat them and understand them. Of course, Narancia got it wrong and Fugo got annoyed at him again. Gifted people enjoy problem solving. In any situation, the first thing in their minds is what the problem is, instead of the steps learned to deal with the situation. To phrase it positively, it will be great adaptability and quick thinking. To phrase it negatively, it means a mess. When Fugo sees Miss Star is hurt and there isn't any first aid around, the first thing he thought of to help stop the bleeding is staples and rubber tape. Tools he is most familiar with and used in the most creative, or disgusting, way possible. Like what I've mentioned in the synopsis, a stand is a manifestation of one's inner self. Fugo's stand, Purple Haze, is one of the most dangerous stands due to its power of emitting virus. It also represents a side of Fugo that he always wants to hide from others. Abakio's comment on how Fugo always tries to control what Purple Haze does suggests how Fugo is very aware of how he presents himself to others. When Purple Haze first appears, he is seen in a pose that seems like he is suppressing himself. A lot of gifted people undergo a forced choice dilemma, which is how they feel that they need to choose between suppressing their real selves or risk their social life, especially in an environment where their giftedness is not well received. Purple Haze might be a representation of this self that Fugo has been suppressing. This is reflected in the appearance of Purple Haze. He wears braces that can be seen as a symbol of control and suppression. The capsules on his fist encapsulates his talent and ability that, to him, is a poison to others and thus needs to be hidden. The constant drooling represents how his intensity still seeps out even with the suppression. The bloodshot eyes are presented as red bars. That represents his imprisonment of his own intensity and identity. And these features are covered by a shielded helmet that protects him and the outside world from harming each other. It is also noteworthy that the enemy they are dealing with when we are introduced to Purple Haze is called Man in the Mirror, which represents the reflection of oneself. And this property of mirror matches that of Purple Haze very well, as is a true self that Fugo wants to suppress all along. This is further echoed in the opening, where Fugo and his stand are shown to be mirroring each other. The motif of suppression is found in Abakio's comment that Fugo tries not to summon Purple Haze unless absolutely necessary, showing how he is often trying to suppress his inner self. When compared to most stands in the series, Purple Haze is a much more passive stand. Purple Haze's main offensive means is not his punches, but the virus that is emitted from the capsules as he punches. It's as if Purple Haze's very existence is the weapon. This mirrors Fugo's feelings about his giftedness and intensity. About his abnormal intensity will make him do terrible things and hurt all others around him. It is just like some gifted individuals' feelings towards their own giftedness. Their inability to blend in with the crowd nor understand others' brain processes make them feel like their very existence is a sin and would bring others to their misfortune. This fear and anxiety does manifest in Fugo through Purple Haze, as we can see that when Purple Haze is in the scene, he is constantly seen to be groaning in pain. The virus from Purple Haze dies a few dozen seconds of being exposed to normal daylight, which is like how the intensity, or giftedness, gets killed by being exposed to the daily environment with people not being able to tolerate the virus of giftedness. However, when the virus starts being released, it is like an explosion and then disappears like a storm. These carefully chosen words all represent the intensity that is constantly felt by a gifted mind. To top it off, Abakio's comment represents how some people would view these exceptionally gifted people with such intensity. Violet. Yep, that's another gifted trait. Perfectionistic tendencies. When there is something that is within their control, yet they kind of screwed it up, they get into that panic mode and always feels the need to fix it. And this action could be sometimes so awkward and random that it becomes comical, even in dire situations. And others just simply don't get it. Note that Stan represents not the real inner self, but the person's interpretation of their real self. To Fugo, his giftedness is a poison, a virus, an illness that will harm all, regardless of whether he loves or hates those people. And once a person is infected, Fugo is powerless to undo the harm. That's the power of purple haze. However, with the research and understanding of giftedness right now, we know that Fugo is simply a member of the neurodiverse community, and giftedness is not a virus and simply requires support. The motif of suppression is also the ultimate reason behind why Fugo left the gang after Bucciarati betrays the boss. Towards Bucciarati's speech about justice and righteousness, we see Fugo holding his arms tight, shaking. He is suppressing himself. Even though he knows Bucciarati is right, he is not allowing his true self to follow Bucciarati, forming a stark contrast of Narancia, who follows his heart despite his fear and hesitation. Fugo instead opts for the safest and most logical option of not taking the risk, of standing back as he watches his comrades one by one board the ship of betrayal with Bucciarati to pursue the justice they believe in. The final blow is dealt by Bucciarati when he said,
それでもだ。俺は自分に嘘は
and
つけ
that
ない。
marks the last episode Fugo appears in this series. Fugo's intellectual ability could have brought him to eminence, and is also recognized by people around him. But those people mainly take advantage of his giftedness instead of offering him the support he needs until he meets Bucciarati. Yet, years of suppressing his true self has made him unable to confront his feelings and identity, and he would only opt for the safest path and shy away from his true self, just like many gifted individuals in our society, even more than 20 years since the story was written. When one cannot be a righteous idiot, nor see the future of pursuing righteousness in the harsh, brutal reality, what can one do but to close their eyes and keep their true selves suppressed? Lyceum Center for the Gifted and Talented was founded to provide support and services to gifted individuals and their family. Please like and subscribe to our page to tell more people about the importance of gifted education. You can find our website and Facebook page in the description below. Which character do you suspect to be gifted and want us to talk about in our future videos? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And as Fugo's birthday is coming up on the 10th of April, we'd also like to wish Fugo a happy birthday.